A fire in the laundry room just shifted the balance of power at one of the most contested waterways on Earth. USS Gerald R. Ford, a $13 billion warship, the most expensive ever built, was pulled from the Red Sea. And the Pentagon's answer wasn't another carrier. It was 4,400 Marines. We told you Tripoli would close the final gap. USS Tripoli, LHA-7, America class, 44,000 tons, 20 F-35Bs, and the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit aboard. She was moving west toward Hormuz, carrying the one capability 3 carrier strike groups couldn't provide: close-range air cover directly over the shipping lanes, and Marines on the ground controlling a corridor Iran spent 4 decades turning into a fortress. One ship, one unit. The last piece of an equation the Navy had been building since day one of Operation Epic Fury. Then the Ford caught fire. March 12th. A blaze ignites aboard USS Gerald R. Ford, not in the reactor compartments, not near the weapons magazines, in the laundry facility. Lint, chemicals, confined steel. Ford had been running without interruption for over 260 days, 9 months of continuous flight operations, not a single scheduled maintenance stop. Push a machine past its service window, and the machine will tell you. Ford told everyone. The fire burned for 30 hours. Hundreds of sailors were treated for smoke inhalation, and the most advanced warship ever constructed was forced to limp toward Suda Bay for repairs, pulling carrier-based air cover out of the Red Sea at the single worst moment possible. This wasn't battle damage. This was the cost of overextension. Physics doesn't negotiate with price tags. Every machine has a breaking point, and Ford found hers at day 261. The Red Sea went dark. No carrier overhead. The Houthi gap widened. And Iran, watching the most expensive ship in naval history retreat toward a repair dock, began recalculating. What happened next, nobody had on their planning board. 7 days after the fire, the Pentagon moved USS Boxer, LHD-4, WASP class, carrying the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, forward by 3 full weeks. Boxer wasn't part of the Hormuz plan, but the fire rewrote the math, and the math needed an answer the carrier fleet couldn't give. So instead of 1 amphibious assault ship approaching Hormuz, there are now 2. Instead of 2,200 Marines, there are 4,400. Instead of a ship that only fights from the air, there's also a vessel with a 266-foot well deck, housing hovercraft capable of delivering main battle tanks directly onto a hostile shore. The plan called for a scalpel. The fire produced a scalpel and a sledgehammer, operating side by side. Did a laundry fire on a $13 billion carrier accidentally assemble the most lethal amphibious force Hormuz has ever seen? To understand why the Pentagon reached for Marines instead of another carrier, you have to start with a question nobody wanted to answer out loud. Why not just deploy a different carrier? Because there isn't one available. The U.S. Navy fields 11 nuclear-powered supercarriers, the largest concentration of capital warships anywhere on Earth. Right now, that number isn't enough. Lincoln is committed to the Arabian Sea. Truman enters a 4.5-year nuclear refueling overhaul this summer. Eisenhower just returned from a record-setting deployment. Every remaining hull is either in maintenance, working through a training cycle, or positioned on the wrong side of the planet. Carrier availability is at its tightest point in a generation. Close to half the fleet unavailable at any given time. Ford's fire didn't just remove one ship from the board. It exposed a structural hole that no other carrier can fill on the timeline the Red Sea actually demands. That's why the Pentagon pulled from a different shelf entirely. USS Boxer, WASP class, 40,000 tons, was built around a concept Tripoli deliberately walked away from. Where Tripoli traded her well deck for expanded hangar space and 20 F-35Bs, Boxer kept it. A 266-foot flooding bay at the stern that deploys 3 LCAC hovercraft directly into open water. Where Tripoli fights from altitude with a full air wing, Boxer carries 6 F-35Bs. And the landing craft, armored vehicles, heavy equipment, and Marines trained to use all of it on a contested beach. These 2 ships were never designed to work together. Tripoli is the first hull of the America class. The Navy's experiment in building a pocket carrier by removing the well deck entirely. Boxer is the generation before that, built when the Navy still believed Marines needed to come from the sea, not just the sky. Two opposing philosophies, two opposing answers to the same question. How do you put power ashore? Think of it this way. Tripoli is a sports car. Fast, precise, enormous reach, but no cargo space. Boxer is a pickup truck. Slower, less glamorous, but it shows up with everything you need to actually build something. Sending Tripoli to Hormuz alone is like pulling up to a construction site in a Ferrari. Impressive, but you can't pour a foundation from a two-seater. Individually, each ship solves half the problem. Together, they solve the whole thing. And an accident just put them in the same theater at the same time. Two ships, two opposite designs. Three problems neither one can handle alone. Here's what happens when you run them together. Three fortified islands sit directly inside the Hormuz shipping corridor. Abu Musa, Greater Tumb, Lesser Tumb. Iran seized all three in 1971 and spent the next 5 decades converting them into unsinkable weapons platforms. Anti-ship missile batteries, coastal radar networks, artillery positions, IRGC garrisons dug into the rock. After weeks of epic Fury strikes, any launcher that survived is still threatening every vessel transiting the corridor at point-blank range. Those islands have to go. But the water surrounding them is mined. Conventional landing craft moving through that minefield would be slaughtered before they reached the beach. That was always the design. The mines weren't just a naval weapon, they were a moat. Iran built them specifically to make those islands untouchable. Tripoli solves the first half. Marines insert via vertical envelopment. MV-22 Ospreys and CH-53 helicopters fly over the minefield at altitude. They never touch the water. Strike teams land on the high ground, take out radar installations and missile launchers, and extract. Clean, effective. But they carry only personal weapons and light gear. They can raid, they cannot hold. Boxer closes the equation. Her well deck opens. 266 feet long, 50 feet wide, and 3 LCAC hovercraft launch at over 40 knots. Here's the engineering that changes everything. An LCAC doesn't float, it flies. 7 feet above the surface on a pressurized air cushion. Pressure-activated mines require direct hull contact to trigger. The LCAC never makes contact. Where every conventional vessel in the fleet is stopped, the LCAC flies straight through. Do the math. A conventional landing craft makes 10 knots through mined water, 5 nautical miles of minefield, 30 minutes of lethal exposure. An LCAC crosses that same distance at 40+ knots, 7.5 minutes, 7 feet above the mines. 30 minutes versus 7.5. That's the calculation that makes an assault on these islands survivable. LCACs carry M1 Abrams tanks, armored assault vehicles, and heavy weapons systems. They deliver all of it onto the beach, while Ospreys from Tripoli are simultaneously landing Marines on the high ground from above. Iran now has to defend from 2 directions at once. Airborne Marines on the ridgeline, armored vehicles on the beach. This isn't a raid anymore. This is a full amphibious assault. 2,200 Marines can hit and withdraw. 4,400 Marines seize and hold. Islands solved. But the strait isn't just islands. It's 300 square nautical miles of mined water, and the ships designed to clear it are the most exposed vessels in any fleet. Mine countermeasure ships run the most advanced mine hunting technology afloat. Airborne laser detection, unmanned surface vessels dragging sonar arrays, underwater drones that locate and destroy individual mines. The capability is real, but the ships themselves are slow, predictable, and nearly defenseless, doing the most critical work in the strait while carrying almost no weapons to protect themselves. They're facing 2 simultaneous threats. From above, Iranian surveillance drones locate the LCS, transmit coordinates to mobile launchers along the coastline, and a cruise missile is in the air within minutes. From the surface, IRGC fast attack craft, 50-knot boats armed with anti-ship missiles, still numbering in the hundreds, hidden across coves and inlets along the Iranian shore. They only need one to get through. Tripoli provides the roof. F-35Bs on combat air patrol detect surveillance drones before those drones can transmit targeting data. Kill the drone, break the kill chain. No coordinates reach the launcher. The missile never fires. Tripoli shields the minesweepers from above. But who covers them on the surface? Tripoli carries no surface craft. F-35Bs are fast, but they can't be everywhere at once, and fast boats in cluttered coastal shallows are hard to track from altitude. Boxer provides the walls. Her well deck deploys rigid-hull inflatable boats and patrol craft that establish a surface screen around the minesweepers. AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters fly low-altitude patrols, hunting fast boats at close range with hellfires before they reach weapons distance. Tripoli is the roof. Boxer is the walls. The minesweepers work inside the bubble. For the first time in Hormuz, mine clearance operations have full spectrum protection, air cover above, surface defense around the perimeter. The timeline for clearing the shipping corridor compresses from months to weeks. Islands can be seized, mines can be cleared. But the third problem is the one that determines whether Hormuz opens for weeks or for years. Seizing an island takes a day. Holding one takes weeks. Marines ashore need a continuous flow of ammunition, fuel, food, parts, and replacement equipment. The concept driving this is Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations, EABO. Marines establish HIMARS launchers, radar arrays, and forward arming and refueling points on captured islands and coastlines, controlling the strait with ground-based firepower instead of ships. HIMARS already sank Iranian warships during Epic Fury, firing from Bahrain. The weapon works. The question is whether you can keep it fed. Tripoli can resupply by air. MV-22 Ospreys carry up to 20,000 pounds at max load, but at the combat ranges needed for Hormuz, effective payload drops to roughly 8,000 pounds per sortie. That covers ammunition, medicine, food. It doesn't cover bulk fuel, heavy generator sets, vehicles, or HIMARS reload pallets. A supply chain running exclusively through Ospreys keeps a forward base alive. It doesn't make it permanent. Boxer solves what Tripoli can't. LCACs carry over 60 tons per run. Fuel bladders, ammunition pallets, replacement vehicles, generator sets, everything a forward base needs to operate indefinitely. They fly over the minefields surrounding the islands, offload directly onto the beach, cycle back to Boxer, reload, and go again. Turnaround measured in hours. Run the comparison. One LCAC carries roughly 120,000 pounds per trip. One Osprey at combat range carries 8,000 pounds. One LCAC run equals 15 Osprey sorties. Boxer carries 3 LCACs, 3 runs per day per craft. That's 9 LCAC deliveries, 540 tons of supplies to forward positions daily. To match that by air, Tripoli would need to fly 135 Osprey sorties every single day. The airframes cannot sustain that rate. The math isn't close. Without the well deck, EABO is a theory. With the well deck, EABO is a supply chain. Marines don't just insert, shoot, and extract. They arrive, establish, and stay. Fixed positions, sustainable logistics, persistent firepower. Iran now faces American ground positions on territory it considered untouchable, and it cannot cut the supply line because the supply line flies over the very mines Iran laid to make this impossible. 3 problems, 3 solutions, each dangerous individually. Here's what happens when all 3 run simultaneously. They don't just operate in parallel, they reinforce each other. Scenario 1 executes. Marines seize Abu Musa. Missile batteries go dark. Tankers transiting the corridor are no longer taking point-blank fire from fixed positions. Immediately safer. But the island seizure does something else. It eliminates the Iranian observation posts that were tracking minesweeper movements from above. With those posts gone, LCS ships can work closer to the corridor without being geolocated and targeted. That accelerates Scenario 2. Mine countermeasure ships begin systematic clearance of the shipping lanes, operating inside their protective bubble. The mine clearance enables the logistics pipeline. The logistics sustain the forward positions. The positions protect the mine clearance operation. and Scenario 3 locks the cycle in place. EABO positions on seized islands deploy HIMARS covering the full width of the strait. 26 F-35Bs between the two ships maintain local air superiority inside the Gulf without a carrier present. Shore-based Marines control what ships alone never could. Persistent, around-the-clock coverage from positions that can't be sunk. The result isn't 3 separate operations. It's one interlocking system, where each component makes the others stronger. Remove one piece, and the system weakens. Run all 3 together, and it becomes self-reinforcing. Now look at this from Tehran. Iran has to defend 3 things simultaneously: the islands, the coastline, and the water in between. But their navy, air defenses, and manufacturing infrastructure were dismantled during epic fury. What remains is the IRGC ground force, concealed fast attack boats, and whatever mobile launchers survived. Concentrate on the islands. The coastline lies open. Fortify the coastline. The islands fall. Spread thin across all of it. Nothing holds anywhere. There's no correct answer to this equation, because Iran built its entire defensive posture against a navy that fights from the sea. Not Marines who ride hovercraft over the minefields that were supposed to make all of this impossible. That's the accidental advantage. No commander wanted the fire. No planner drew this up. But the chain reaction produced a force configuration Iran never built a counter for. Iran looked at the fire and saw an opening. By the time they finished recalculating, the answer was already in the water. Be straight about the risks. Mine clearance still takes weeks. EABO at this scale has never been field tested. Casualties are a real possibility. Anyone telling you otherwise is ignoring the physics. These operations are dangerous, and the outcomes aren't guaranteed. But the trajectory shifted. The equation moved from a months-long standoff to an active solution. 2 ships that were never supposed to share the same theater, assembled by accident, now approaching a problem Iran spent 40 years designing to be unsolvable. The timeline compressed from months to weeks. The initiative moved from Iran to the ships closing on its coastline. 3 paradoxes close this out. The fire didn't happen because of a design failure. It happened because a machine ran for 261 straight days. $13 billion builds the most capable carrier afloat. It doesn't buy infinite endurance. That's not a criticism, that's engineering. But one carrier goes down, and the system responds with 2 amphibious ships, 4,400 Marines, 26 stealth fighters, hovercraft that fly over minefields, and a well deck that turns a raid into a permanent occupation. Only one navy on the planet can absorb a carrier casualty and come out the other side with a more capable force configuration. That's not luck. That's industrial depth. And Iran solved for the right threats. Mines, missiles, fast boats, 4 decades of preparation, but for the wrong variable. The fire didn't weaken the force, it reconfigured it. And the reconfigured force is more dangerous than the one it replaced. Because Iran prepared for carriers. And Marines just showed up.